Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming. We'll get started. Marissa, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, this is Marissa. Hi, everybody. My name is Marissa Ditkowski. My pronouns are she, her. I am off camera. I am the executive director of the National Disabled Legal Professionals Association, or NDLPA, NDLPA for the interpreter. Um, we are an association of disabled legal professionals. We define that pretty broadly. We provide direct support for folks experiencing barriers. We have a mentorship program. We put on events like this one. We create resources and more. I encourage you to check out our website and join if you are interested. Membership can be as little as $0. We don't ask questions. We just want it to be accessible for everybody. A couple of access notes before we get started. Number one, if you can keep your camera off unless you are a panelist or moderator, at least until we have the Q&A portion, that would be awesome, just for access. Number two, if you can say your name before you speak, that is extremely helpful for access. Number three, we have captions. If you press the button on the bottom for captions, you should be able to access those. And we have an ASL interpreter, and you can pin the interpreter, whatever is most accessible to you. Um, Fourth, if folks can speak clearly, as clearly as possible, and at a not too quick a pace, just for the captioner and interpreter, that would be helpful. I think I have captured pretty much everything, but I'll kick it to AJ in case I missed anything and to get us started on our program tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is AJ speaking. I am a Black dude with a graying beard. I've got on a gray hoodie or green hoodie and a hat. I have an assistant co-host with me off screen who may come on screen. I am the president of the board of the National Disabled Legal Professionals Association. And this evening, we are going to have a career transition panel. We have three amazing guests with us, three amazing panelists. Um, the first is Hannah Zach, who is a disabled advocate and first year law student at Suffolk University Law School, dedicated to advancing disability equity, civil rights, and access to justice. Before law school, she served in the Biden Harris administration's Office of Civil Rights and now works as operating manager at Lawyers Defending American Democracy, supporting nationwide efforts to protect democratic norms and the rule of law. Our next guest is, thank you, Kutsia Naki. Sorry, Kutsia, I did not ask for the last name pronunciation. Is an assistant professor at the University of the District of Columbia, David A. Clark School of Law, where her work centers disability justice and the lived experiences of disabled people as catalysts for transformative legal and cultural change. A former senior counsel in the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Access to Justice, she now continues to advance equity and accessibility through teaching, research, and her acclaimed podcast, Down to the Struts. And last but not least, we have Joanna Valdez, is the founding attorney of Joanna Valdez Law, where she works to expand access to justice for children, youth, and survivors through direct representation and collaborative partnerships across Washington state. Drawing on years of experience in immigration advocacy and nonprofit leadership, she brings a deep commitment to uplifting her clients, her community, and the broader movement for equitable legal services. If I pronounce anyone's name incorrectly, or if you would like to add more to your bio, we will have a round where you can give a brief overview of what you want to share about yourselves apart from your bios, what you did before law school, and why you chose to go to law school, and what their career transition looked like to date. I know that's a lot, but that is what I was given on the sheet to read off. So with that, we can start with Hannah if you want to go first.
Yes. So, hi everyone. My name is Hannah Zach. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a white woman. I have auburn hair, which you can't really tell. And I'm wearing a brown blazer. Unfortunately, not matching my co-panelists who are both wearing pink blazers. Thank you so much for having me here. So I'm sharing what I did before and how I went to law school. Is that the question?
It says, give a brief overview of what you want to share about yourself, what you did before law school, and why you went to law school, and what your career was before you look like, or your career transitions.
Perfect. Thank you. So I spent 3 years in the Office for Civil Rights at the Department of Education, supporting the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, and ensuring that the processes and operations of the organization went smoothly. Prior to that, I worked in prison education and I worked on the Biden campaign, which is how I got my job in the Civil Rights Office. I recently I'm a 1L at Suffolk Law School in Boston. I went to law school because I found advocacy as a child out of necessity. I was constantly being failed by the systems that were there to protect me, especially when I was a victim of cyberbullying. Um, but as I grew up, I found, that advocacy for myself wasn't the only thing that mattered, but that collective advocacy and making sure that groups had their voices heard, to sort of became my repertoire. Um, so so I think that law school is just a natural step for me. Once I realized I wasn't going to become a doctor, because blood isn't for me. I sort of realized that here's a career that I have this voice and I have this passion, and I'm really interested in using it to make sure that everyone's voice is heard and represented and seen. So what does that mean after law school? I guess you'll hear a little bit more about my hopes and goals. But definitely interested in education law and making sure access to education is on the top of my list. But I'm sure you'll hear more about why that's at stake in later to come. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Kutsia, would you like to give a brief overview of what you want to share about yourself, what you did before law school, why you went to law school, and what your career's transitions have looked like to date?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, AJ. So I'm Kutsianaki, she, her pronouns. I'm a South Asian woman with shoulder length, curly dark hair and dark eyes, and I'm wearing a pink sweater today. And I'm really excited to be with you all. So I'll just um, touch briefly on kind of my career trajectory, and I'm sure we'll get more in depth, because I've had a bit of a circuitous career that kind of demonstrates all the different kinds of things you could potentially do with a law degree. So before law school, in undergrad, I majored in political science and human rights. I did a lot of internships. I knew actually coming into college that I wanted to be a lawyer, but I thought to myself, what does that actually look like? What does it mean to be a lawyer? So I went to college in New York City. And so I did a lot of internships at various legal aid organizations doing different kinds of things. So I was working in a housing unit doing eviction defense and prevention. And then I was working with survivors of domestic violence. And I also did some sort of policy research work at a place called the Urban Justice Center, that did this really interesting study about why people who are screened as eligible for food stamps, or what was used to be called food stamps, now called SNAP benefits, which is at stake right now with the shutdown, why people who were screened as eligible by these community-based organizations weren't finalizing the process and going through and getting their public benefits. So all of these things really culminated in a realization that the work I was doing was focused on something called access to justice. And when I went to law school, I realized I really didn't want to litigate, and I was kind of interested in immigration policy. And so I ended up at this place called the Bureau Institute of Justice, where I was working on these national programs federal contracts that are now at great risk, some of which are even canceled, that provide essential legal services for unaccompanied immigrant children who are facing deportation. So I did some of that there. I worked on similar like fellowship programs at Equal Justice Works, which many of you might be familiar with. So again, like running these national legal services programs, but shifting my focus more to junior career lawyers just out of law school doing these fellowships. And then I was really interested in research. So I ended up at the Pew Charitable Trusts, working on access to civil courts. And then that led me to my role at the Department of Justice, which I was in until mid-May, doing policy work around access to justice. So quick bit about my office. It was established under the Obama administration. It was shut down in the first Trump administration. And so, we were pretty clear-eyed about the fact that we were vulnerable. Access to justice as kind of an institution within the government is not authorized by congressional statute. So we knew we were vulnerable. And yeah, I can talk a little bit more about that later on. But just to say, kind of as a final kind of roundup, is that there's lots of different interesting things you can do with a law degree, and you can even sort of pivot between those things in interesting ways and kind of see how your skills build. And I didn't really even see the through line in my own career until I took a moment to reflect back and in preparation to this panel. So just a good thought on that is that you can use your degree to take you in all different directions. Thanks, AJ.
Thank you so much, Kitsia. This is AJ. Joanna, would you like me to repeat it, or have you heard the question enough?
I've got it in front of me, AJ. We're good.
Oh, lovely.
Hi, look, another person in pink. Um, so yeah, I call this my third life or my third chapter. It's my third career for sure. I started out as a child, as a child of 20. I joined the Air Force and I was a linguist in the Air Force for 4 years. And then I transitioned from that to pursuing academic pursuits. I was going to be a professor of French literature, French culture, and I was doing that because I was really interested. I was just deeply interested in the experiences of immigrants, and I loved French, and so I combined those things by studying French migration. Or migration into France from North Africa. Anyway, there I was, like holing up in libraries and kind of doing work that was very isolating, and I realized, what I really care about is less about the intellectual exercise, but more about all about the people. And so I just looked closely at my what was important to me, and made the decision to leave my PhD program. And so I looked at policy, and I spoke with different people to know if I would be good at that, or if what I needed to do was to be a lawyer. And I settled on lawyer. And and it's always been immigration really for me. And so when I was preparing for that, I did a lot of volunteer work at like in Los Angeles, and working with like day laborers and so on. And that led me to Northeastern Law School, which is a school that's very focused on doing public interest work. And so I tried on a few different hats during law school in terms of the practice of immigration law, but ultimately did wind up focused on unaccompanied children, and and then I stayed with one organization for the whole. So I've been practicing for 8 years, and I was with an organization for almost the whole time until this March. Um, uh, Kutsia mentioned the loss of funding, federal funding from organizations, and that was certainly something that, of course, hit I think everyone in the immigration nonprofit world. And so, yeah, so that's when I went into private practice. And so that's really for immigration, I mean, sorry, for the legal profession, my only career shift has been from working for a nonprofit to now working for myself, a profit, a for-profit organization, but still serving the same folks.
Thank you all so much. I have a list of questions. I don't know if we'll get through them all, so I will mix them up to make sure that we have a nice array of responses. The first question is, when you learned that your job was changing significantly or even being eliminated, we're seeing that now, especially in the federal workforce. Katsuya, you talked about this a little bit in your answer. What was your immediate reaction and what steps did you take first? Who or what was the most helpful in supporting you through this transition? I know I'll combine questions. Given the current political climate, a lot of people are facing this exact question. So I would love to hear what y'all think about, people who are finding themselves, losing their jobs to the shutdown. And, Joanna, you talked about this in your answer, losing federal funding and things like that. So we can go in reverse order this time, and then I will mix it up. So, Joanna, you get to speak again.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is that while the funding has gone away, the people who need the services have not, of course. And so knowing that really helped me have confidence that I would be able to sustain myself being out on my own. And so, as far as how you know, how the situation currently has impacted my career planning and professional opportunities. Yeah, I learned something pretty interesting, which was, like I said, I was with a very large nonprofit, and I was kind of surprised that it seemed that they had put most of their eggs in one basket. And so when the federal funding came under threat, it really launched them into upheaval. And so that's a really big lesson. I think it should be for anyone that's depending on any one source to keep them operating, right? And that's and it's not just like money wise, but for instance, so for myself, I mean it's incredibly sad and difficult to see immigration relief being, diminished, growing smaller and smaller. And so that's terrifying for many reasons, including that this is how I make my living. So I also practice in family law which is in direct correlation with my immigration work, but I am also expanding further into family law. Folks are getting divorced forever. So, and there's always going to be like custody matters. And so so that's how I'm addressing that, is trying to protect myself and my sustainability by expanding as safely as I can, as carefully as I can into broader areas of practice.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Katsuya, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. This is it's a great but a challenging question. I mean, I think that just to sort of complement what's already been said, I think something that is important when you are faced with kind of something you can do to, I guess I should talk about what you could do to prepare for those unexpected transitions that you might have to experience. And that is, thinking about, like I was saying earlier, what is the through line in my work? And for some people, that's really easy answer. They have a particular, whether it's working in education, whatever the case may be, immigration, or they have a particular issue area, or they just love to litigate. They don't care what they litigate. But thinking about what the thread and the through line is in your work, and then along your journey, really prioritizing, building a network around that, like building a community of people who do that work. So that's really kind of what I did very slowly in this access to justice space. And with respect to transitioning into a legal academic career, I always had this kind of tangential interest in academia, in teaching and scholarship research. And so I took opportunities to do guest lectureships. I was a visiting professor at CUNY Law School for a year. I published, and in my case, again, I think that this was a bit easier for me because I knew that my office, when I went to DOJ, I knew the office was politically vulnerable, and I understood that the election was coming up. I began work there in February of 2023. So I actually decided to go ahead and go on the legal academic job market, which is a year-long process, in the summer of 2024, even though we weren't yet sure what the outcome of the election would be, as kind of a fail-safe, as a backup plan. And I recognize, that in other government offices, you just didn't see any of this coming. But in my case, I sort of did because of past being Prelude. And so yeah, I went ahead and did that. And I decided that if the election outcome was different and the office remained open, I would reassess and maybe defer my plan to join a law faculty. So I think that the takeaways I would say from my experience are really think about what is the work you're doing, what is the mission you're trying to achieve overall in your body of work, and really make sure you're well networked. And so it can't always save you, but when you come to these crossroads and these precipices, you can fall back on those relationships, and they can often help you sort out what your next will be.
Thank you so much, Kutsia. Hannah, you talked about how you were explicitly part of an administration. Do you want to talk about kind of your experience?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. So I was I feel like I'm in a little bit of a different position than, a lot of the federal employees that have recently lost their jobs because of the reduction in forces and firings. As an appointee, you sort of know that you serve at the pleasure of the president, and when that ends, your job disappears. That doesn't mean that my situation, of course, I had hoped that the election did not turn out the way it did, and that I would stay on, and then I would stay at OCR, and continuing doing the incredible work that so many of us love to do. But I remember, I forget, is it November 5th? Like vividly, we cried, and we mourned. And unfortunately, it just feels like it's been a continuation of that, with the continuing reduction in force of civil servants across the government. You know, I am a little bit younger, so I sort of was able to pivot back to school. And I am grateful for that opportunity to do so, because I knew that law was in my future. And I had honestly planned to leave OCR years, like a year or two after I'd gotten there, so I could go to law school. But I decided to stay because it was such a great place. But I think what I can say to people is that, like, mourn your loss, because it's devastating. I never imagined to be a part of an organization. And I know several of my colleagues are on this call, so thank you. You know, to see justice happen, and to, law did that, right? For example, like in LAUSD, when kids weren't getting the services, like that they were entitled to because of the pandemic, like we went in there and we said, no, like you have to provide compensatory services to students, and that affected over 66,000 students. That's incredible to me. And that's the work that's being lost every day. So I feel like, this mourning period hasn't finished from losing my job, but I think it's much bigger than myself. And fortunately, I was able to move home and I was able to afford going to law school. But I think it's a journey, and I think that I'm grateful to have the support of my family and my parents, and then my many colleagues that continue to support me to this day, even though we're not a part of the same organization. But I think, it's just sad. And watching institutions sort of fall apart, I don't think will ever get easier. But, support it, relying on the people that support you. Yeah, I just think I don't have my answer isn't as inspiring or elaborate as my co-panelists, because I'm sort of still figuring out, what's next, and day by day as I try to survive law school. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. This is AJ. That kind of leads into the next question, which are, what are some strategies you have found effective for maintaining resilience during times of uncertainty and instability and change? Kutsia, you haven't got to go first, so you can go first for this question.
Thanks, AJ. Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And I really agree with Hannah too about mourning your loss. I think that's part of resilience. So our office, we found out in mid-April that it was going to be zeroed out in the 2026 budget by the department. They were very swift, and actually the final day of the office was this past Friday. So a lot of us, it was a very small team as far as, DOJ components go. We were a small office. At any given time, we had between 40 and 50 staff. These were people who were incredibly dedicated to justice, really cared about making sure that the everyday person's interaction with federal agencies, with the Department of Justice, was fair, was equitable, was smooth, was accessible. So it was a deep loss, and also to have to go through this for the second time for some of the folks. Some of my colleagues, had to have been able to find placements in other parts of the department. Several of them were riffed at the same time that the government shut down. Just a lot of churn and turmoil. A lot of us left, either taking the deferred resignation or getting new jobs or whatever the case may be. So it was really the end of like this incredible family that we had built, and something that I think that has all helped us all to hold things together is the network that we built with one another. So we have like a Signal chat and a WhatsApp group, and we stay in close touch. A lot of us have been supporting each other through the kind of bureaucracy of separating from the federal government. Like, what do I do with my retirement? What do I do with this and that? I'm having trouble dealing with the benefits people, like just kind of doing kind of mutual aid in that way, sharing resources. So for me, just having that community, and then also like happy things like sharing baby pictures and kids' Halloween costumes, and, making sure that the other parts of everyone's life are okay, meeting up with each other for those of us who are in DC. So I think that has been really helpful. And I think that's something that's really special and unique about a lot of these government offices. People really, really deeply care about what they are doing and the mission they are executing, in a way I haven't seen. And I've worked in a lot of places before DOJ, and just the level of commitment is really, it inspired me. And I think that having these relationships and having this camaraderie with my colleagues has been something that has really helped me a lot. And so I think that is something that has been really important.
Thank you so much, Katsia. Joanna, would you like to add?
Sure. My answer to my question just walked in the door, but in terms of resilience, I think one of the questions also at somewhere in this document also speaks to, well, maybe or maybe my mind just went there to thinking about the first time for those of us who were already practicing during the first go round of this guy whose name I don't like to say. And so for me, resilience and boundaries have really, in ways, been made easier in the sense that I have two young children who need me. And so like I have like a built-in source of resilience and of boundary setting because I can't do my, I can't work all of the hours. I need to be a mom as well. But the other thing that comes to my mind has to do with not just those steps that, like Kudia mentioned, like not just the things that are sort of outside of work. I was thinking when I looked at this question, I thought of the Three Little Pigs and the house that was able to, bear, like protect the pigs from the big bad wolf, if I'm not mixing up all my characters, but I think that's the right guy. So um, resilience also looks like the type of work that you do. And so I know that this is more and less possible depending on if you're working for yourself or working for an organization, right? So not everyone can choose the work that they're doing within, if they're already in a job where someone else, dictates that. However, if there is space for that, I think it's so important, and I'm seeing this from my friends and other colleagues. Like me, for example, my specialty is working with unaccompanied children, and part of that work is involved going to immigration court. So now I don't only represent unaccompanied children, I don't only represent children and youth, I also represent adults. But I am not going to immigration court by and large because that is a major trigger. It's a major hotspot and for stress and for, just things coming at you that you have to respond to very quickly. So I've decided I struggled because I have that expertise, but I thought, oh, I really owe it to the kids to do this. And it's not wrong in a sense, but I can't, sort of sacrifice myself for the cause at the same time. So where I landed is I'm largely not doing court work, immigration court work, but I am for some clients. And that's going to look like mostly the kids. And so it's kind of a compromise. And I see other people who are saying, okay, I'm going to do some detention work, but I'm going to also do more of this other type of work. And and lastly, I would just want to say that, like, I think a lot of folks maybe, at least in this group, and maybe who are listening as well, are the sort who also do volunteer work. Yay. And thank you. But you don't have to do all the committees. You don't have to do all the events, right? Like, just also give yourself time to, you're already doing enough, probably, okay? So like just like be okay. It's okay. It's okay to say no to some things.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Hannah, you kind of led us into this question, but you didn't get to answer. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think that the insights have been really powerful and totally true. I think community is the thing that's gotten me through the past couple months. Once the rifts happened on March 12th, was flying home on March 12th. The initial rift, sorry. And I'm, if you know me, I'm the type of person where, I see a problem, I have to do something about it, for better or worse. So I started to form like a signal chat with my OCR colleagues that had been rift. And it's now up to about like 300 to 400 participants. And it's more just, a way to tell people like, we care for you, we're here for you, we're providing updates and things like that. But also just like a sense of community because, just like DOJ, you know, Ed has its special, family thing. And, yes, it was 600 employees prior to January 20th. It's a family, right? And when everyone is there to do the same work, to get justice for kids so they can, go to school, a basic right. It feels like there's like this mutual understanding. And it's been, the people fighting to, stay in their jobs. I think that's been inspirational. And of course, some folks have had to move on, for financial reasons or, to maintain their sanity. But I just think, the resilience of people, I think that we completely underestimate ourselves, that we're able to get up, the next day and keep going. And I just think, this whole experience has been that. And again, I have new hobbies. I wanted to go to law school and not say that I had no hobbies. So, I do Pilates now. Okay. And that, it's something that like I didn't do, start, when I was in DC, I came home and I was like, I'm going to take like focus on making my body as strong as I can. And it's something that, means a lot to me now. And, taking time out of, my day or your day to take care of yourself and whatever that looks like to you. I think that's probably, somehow I managed to work out 4 times a week while in school. And I think that's how I haven't, lost it. And it keeps me grounded and, I feel strong. But, finding what works for you, I guess, and keep, people are there for you, people care about you, and never forgetting sort of where you came from. I feel embarrassed to quote Peloton, but I'm going to. Um, there's an instructor, Robin Arzone, and, I took her class before I took the LSAT and I did better than I thought I could. But she has this thing that she says like, you've survived 100% of your hardest days. And it's true, right? Like we're all still here. We've all, gone through it. But we have, and it's very cheesy and it's embarrassing to say, but it's actually something that I do say to people, because it's true. And we have survived our hardest days and, I'm sure there's more to come. But, the power of the human spirit is really strong. And yeah, so thank you, Robin Arzone from Peloton. This is not sponsored, but I recommend her class if you ever, need to pump up or something.
Thank you so much, Hannah. And again, you've led us into the next question, which is great for transitions. Folks have talked about signal chats and WhatsApp groups and kind of finding community. This is an event from the National Disabled Legal Professionals Association. So, what specifically can disabled professionals, legal professionals, whether they're doing policy, practicing law, things like that, do right now to support each other when access to meaningful work or work that we deeply care about is shrinking or under threat or even becoming, I guess, adversarial to the administration? I think now we are at Joanna being the first one to answer that and navigate that question. So, yeah.
Oh boy. Um, it keeps coming back. This was the word that comes up for me all the time is about connections and connecting to people. And like I met Jordan, who invited me to do this panel through a really great program of the Washington State Bar Association and UW Law. And there I made a big chunk of new connections who were pivotal, I think, because the group started in January. It ran January through August of this year. And so the timing was really perfect. And when that also aligned, a lot of things happened in January, some terrible, some better. For me, one of the things was getting a diagnosis of ADHD, and that was so eye-opening and continues to be. And so I think you just have to keep it just don't isolate, right? Like not isolating is, I think, the absolute key. And that can look like even, I wrote this in my bio and I really mean it, that I do try to in life just uplift those around me and myself. But I don't just mean the people that I serve through my work, and I don't just mean the people who I love and the people that I am related to, and but also it's not so hard to find a way to uplift someone who you don't know at all, whose politics you don't know, whose whatever personality you don't know, and like maybe maybe it makes a difference for them that day that someone said like, "Oh, I love your pink hair," or whatever. Or maybe, I just have found that in during times of great struggle and pain, personal suffering, that you're still allowed to feel joy, even though the rest of it can feel so all-encompassing. And so I just encourage everyone um, to spread that, like to just find those little ways to connect with people wherever you find people. Um, and that makes such a difference to do it, to like connect with someone, allow yourself, allow someone to connect with you even briefly, um, and just have a little moment of connection, of joy. That, we've heard of that, I think, joy as an act of resistance, and that is my greatest. I love what you shared, Hannah, about Peloton. I wouldn't be embarrassed. I'm gonna share it with others, even though I don't Peloton, but as a verb. Um, but I just think that like we have to grab onto those and not just, grab onto them when that's all you can do, and also like create those small moments of joy to help buoy yourself, to help others buoy themselves through these choppy seas.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Hannah, we can circle back to you. Is there anything else besides doing Peloton that disabled folks can do to find community and support each other?
There's so much we can do, and to be honest, I haven't Pelotoned in like 6 months, so it hasn't really helped me during this crisis. But it has, just that saying just like has really stuck with me. I think, community is so important. I've been able to sort of identify some of my classmates that are also receive accommodations in law school, and we check in with each other and make sure that we're getting our needs met. And I'm always like, I worked at OCR, like if you need advice, like I will give it to you. You need to get your accommodations and your needs, and like there's laws that protect us from that. But I think that, you know, I just, I think it's easier said than done, but keeping the hope and keeping the faith, what is going on is trying to, bulldoze us. It's trying to get rid of our voices. It's, this is all intentional. And they want us to suffer. And I think, just the simple act of like getting up and fighting another day is an act of resistance. And yeah, I just I wish that I could say, I wish I had more to say, because I think my life right now is Pilates and school. No, just kidding. It's just mainly school. But sticking together and, reaching out to people that have been in your, situation. Jordan has definitely been a support for me, in my early days at law school. I was like, what am I supposed to read? I can't read it all. And she's like, just the cases. And I'm like, okay, great. So I just think, finding those people that, have similar experiences with you, and can sort of, you can look up to, or you can learn from. But I don't know. I wish I had the answer. And if I did, I probably wouldn't be on this webinar. But you know, I just hope that we can all, see the value in each other and see how we all contribute to making, this world a better place for disabled people. So yeah, that's the wisdom I can try to impart. But
Thank you, Hannah. Kutsia, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, thanks, AJ. And thank you, Hannah and Johanna, for everything you said. Plus, 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 plus. That's all I'll say. And beautifully stated. I would come at this like from a couple of different perspectives. I would say disability community has never been more important than it is now. I'm very lucky to have a lot of that, and just being able to help each other out and create that sort of mutual aid network, like I was mentioning earlier. I'm also so honored and delighted that I got to join the board of NDLPA earlier this year, and I'm really looking forward to helping to build the membership, and just using this as a really important space for us to organize. And like Johanna was saying, uplift each other, give each other opportunity. I think this is like such a great vehicle to do that. This organization, I'm so grateful for all the people who made this organization happen. And then as an educator, someone who's new to legal academia, one thing I will say is something that I've always dedicated myself. I am not where I am today without the mentorship and the guidance of other disabled people in my life, others in my life. And so I consider it a top priority to pay it forward to those who come after me. And also I really see, and Hannah, I would love to chat with you more about this, how broken law schools are when it comes to thinking about how to accommodate disabled students, and not even just accommodate, but how to design a legal education that is inclusive of students with all types of bodies and minds. And it's something that I have really dedicated myself to thinking through, is like, how do we create change? We're in a profession that's very rigid, that's very set in its ways, very slow to change. And how do we help the institutions rethink the way in which they do things, so that both the profession and legal education can be more accessible, more inclusive, more just for more people. So that is like kind of how I'm thinking about this right now in this moment, and particularly given how the job market is, and how challenging things have been, especially for everyone, but like really for our community. And so I'm looking forward to having many, 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 many thought partners in how do we create that sea change. And I feel like this is a really good moment when everything is crumbling down. It feels hopeless sometimes, but I think sometimes in those moments, that's the best time to dream up the future that we want to see.
Thank you so much. So we have 10 minutes left, and I've been told that the captioner and the interpreter both have cut off at 7, because that's all we paid for. but I have individual questions for each of you. If you could each answer in 2 to 3 minutes, that would be so lovely for timing. First, I have questions for Joanna. What have been the most unexpected challenges of moving from a large not-for-profit to solo practice, and what motivated your decision to go out on your own?
So, the thing that surprised, or that, yeah, that I didn't, that I didn't know was how long it takes. Honestly, I never wanted to work for myself. I like to be well-resourced and to have people that I can talk to, and, I'm a very sociable human. But so I didn't jump for this opportunity. Um, uh, the amount of time it takes to do like all the stuff that a lot of things you can take for granted when you work for someone else, like just setting up your insurance, like having templates for things, like retainers, and like, so it's just a lot of it really feels to me like you know, maybe it's not another full-time job to do the business side of it, but you are running a business. And so that's its own separate type of career. So not every lawyer is built for that. So I'm certainly learning how I'm trying to be built for that now. And what motivated my decision to go out on my own? It was a combination of burnout because, as is the case in many nonprofits, the workload was pretty heavy, and it had been very intense for a very long time for me, and so I needed time to recover from that burnout, and that combined with the ADHD diagnosis, um, uh, I felt like I was in some ways just starting to, and I was like learning, okay, what are my how do I operate really? Like, I didn't know that I had this thing that was causing me to have challenges in these areas. And so, needing to have the space to figure that out was a major part of what led me to just say, okay, I'm doing this on my own. It is technically on my own, but it's not technically on my own. I have a lot of support from colleagues and friends. Did I answer the question fully, I hope?
I thought that was a great answer.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hannah, for you, how did the current political climate influence your decision to go to law school? And you talked about this a little bit in some of your other answers. And how's the current political climate influencing your experience in law school and your career path for when you graduate? I know you wanted to talk about kind of protecting access to education and things like that.
Yeah. I think I always knew that I wanted to go to law school, as I've mentioned. But I think, this time it's interesting actually at Pilates, I told someone, oh, I was in law school, and she said to me, oh, that's a really interesting choice. And I didn't try to engage because I didn't want to engage. I could have. But I've been thinking about that. Like, to her, why is it such an interesting choice that I'm going to law school, like when democracy is sort of crumbling? But I think that there's no time like the present to go, right? We need people to stand up for the rule of law. We need good lawyers. We need good, advocates. Yes, sometimes I watch what's going on outside the four walls of the law school, and I'm like, okay, so now they're doing this illegal thing and this illegal thing. Where's the rule of law? Like, why am I sitting here in the classroom, learning about it? But I know that, once I become a barred attorney, it'll be my duty to protect the rule of law, and that's what sustained us for the past 250 years. I think, of course, I'm really nervous about what's going to happen to the government. especially the Office for Civil Rights. Something that if I wish that like if my parents knew about when I was growing up, it would have definitely been an office that we utilized for discrimination purposes, to resolve discrimination purposes. And I'm really nervous that it's not going to exist. And I'm nervous, you know, as myself as a student with a disability, currently in school. And I'm nervous for, you know, the everyday student that doesn't have a voice like mine, that doesn't understand what their rights are, you know, but continues to be discriminated against and continues for schools not to understand, you know, basic civil rights laws. Education law is definitely something that I would love to pursue. And, you know, I was really hoping for a full circle moment and to become an attorney at OCR. But the reality is we don't know what it's going to look like in the next couple of years. And I hope and pray, you know, that this incredible institution stands. Because going to school, you know, kids should be able to go to school. It shouldn't be what it is today. And yeah, so I sort of am, you know, reflecting on what's available today and where we can go from here. But yeah, I remain hopeful, but also realistic. So thank you.
so much, Hannah. And Katsia, how did the current political climate influence your decision to pursue a career in academia? I know you kind of talked about this a little bit. And then how's the current political climate shaping opportunities and resources within academia today?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I said, I think this was something I had been interested in for some time, so it was a slow build. But I think there was intention in kind of where I ended up teaching. And so as you mentioned at the top, AJ, I am at the UDC David A. Clark School of Law, which is the DC's only public HBCU. It is, you know, kind of an access law school with a lot of minority students, a lot of students with disabilities. And I'm really happy that by great luck, I landed at a place like UDC because I think that in this moment of crisis, again, as I mentioned earlier, really like my career has been dedicated to bringing in the voices and uplifting people who are often kind of shunted to the sidelines, whether that's because, as Hannah describing, they just can't get what they are entitled to in the education context and they can't have voice in the world. And so I think that is really what drives me. And I think that is also very much connected to my substantive work on access to justice. Something that I say all the time is we can't have access to justice unless the people who are running these justice systems look more like us and reflect us. And I have seen that as a problem in this profession over and over again, to the detriment of all, I would argue, because I think that, for instance, you know, take people with disabilities. We have a lot of genius. We live in a world that is not designed for us, and every single day we have to figure out how to live in that world, and that is valuable. Those are important skills that are undervalued. And I think that the people who come to law school with those lived experience and then have been marginalized and get to a place like UDC, they deserve every opportunity to be successful and to get to places where they can do the work they want to do, whatever that work may be. And I am very dedicated to helping them get there. And so that is really, you know, something that is a driving force. In addition, of course, to my scholarship, which is also focused on similar topics, whether it's the rights of disabled immigrants or people in the civil justice system. So I think that public voice, that marginalized voice, is essential to having what is a true democracy. And we have to do everything we can to make sure that voice is not silenced.
Thank you everyone so much. It's exactly 7 o'clock Eastern right now. So we are wrapping up. I have to give time for Marissa, so we're going slightly over, but I want to say that my part was wrapped at 7. Marissa, please talk.
This is Marissa. Thank you everyone so much for joining. We really appreciate it. Just as a reminder, if this interested you, please feel free to visit our website at ndlpa.org. You can join our organization and get information about events like this, resources, even sign up for our mentorship program. So we hope to see you at future events soon. And if you ever need to contact us, please feel free to email info, INFO, at ndlpa.org. Thanks so much and have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank y'all so much.